Greetings from chess.com. After that exciting round filled with decisive results in round 12, I think 4 players have their chances to win the event now considering their scores: Nepomniachtchi, Anish Giri, MVL and Fabiano Caruana. Now in this video I am going to take you through different possibilities based on the pairings round 13 and round 14. Let's evaluate the chances of MVL. So in case of MVL, he still has an outside chance to win the tournament considering that he faces the tournament leader in the very next round. And in the last year, that in 2020, the first segment of candidates, he had won against Nepomniachtchi. I think he is in a good shape right now because he won his game against Alexienko and would be motivated to give his everything. I'm not sure if it would be a night off again, but I think Nepomniachtchi would be very happy with a draw. So considering that, maybe he'll have to make some changes, and then he also has to beat Wang Hao to have any chances in the event. Because in candidates you have to win the event, only then you get to play Magnus Carlsen. Next, evaluating the chances of Caruana. The positive here is that Caruana is playing against those players who have actually no chances to win the event. So his opponents could be less motivated, and based on that I think Caruana could put a lot of pressure and win those games. He still has an outside chance to win the event, like let's say a mathematical chance, because if Nepomniachtchi loses 2 games and MVL scores only 1.5, in that case Fabiano Caruana would have the best score among the 3 players on 8 points. So there you go. I think still MVL has chances, still Caruana also has chances. Talking of Anish Giri faces Grishchuk with the black pieces in round 13, and he faces Alexienko with the white pieces in round 14. I think again, since Grishchuk is out of the race after the loss yesterday, Giri might do some magic with the black pieces like you saw him doing against Caruana yesterday. And white against Alexienko is again an advantage because Alexienko has not had great results as far as openings are concerned in the second half of the candidates. You saw him play slightly dubious line against the Catalan, and also in the fantasy variation of the Caro-Kann he was not really that well prepared. So again, Giri, if he scores 2/2 and if Nepomniachtchi drops a point, he still has a chance. The only thing is, if he ties with Nepomniachtchi, then Nepomniachtchi has a tie-break advantage because he has already won over him. So that's one point you must consider, that Giri has to go half a point above Nepomniachtchi. So that's one challenge, but still he has got decent chances because Nepomniachtchi will face MVL, which is again a very important match. But if you see the pairings of Giri, I think Giri is playing against those players who are like in the bottom table. So I think that's a good chance for Anish as well. And of course, Nepomniachtchi, as I said, the very next game that he's playing against MVL will determine a lot of things. And the plus for Nepomniachtchi here is that Nepomniachtchi is white. And I think he could maybe get an advantage in the opening, and that should ensure a safe ride to him. Let's see. And then I think he faces Ding Liren, who is playing well now. He won his game against Grishchuk and is in a good frame of mind now, and Ding Liren could cause a lot of resistance, and that's a challenge for Nepomniachtchi. Though Nepomniachtchi is leading by half a point, I think he still has challenges, but of all these 4 players, I think he has most chances to win because he's leading by half point, plus he enjoys this extra half point lead over Giri because Giri has to score half a point more than him to win that tiebreak. So those were what I thought were the chances of these 4 players. Now I think it's a good moment to just quickly go through what happened in round 12. So the first game I have is a game between Wang Hao and Nepomniachtchi, where it took a lot of maneuvering for Nepo to get a very nice position. He was never in trouble, but since he did not have this double bishop advantage, like after bishop f5, now it's white who has double bishop advantage. But Wang Hao did not do much with the double bishops because of precise maneuvering of Nepomniachtchi. He was able to plant his knights at good squares, and then in the end game, There was one critical moment in which I think the game just slipped out of hand. It was this position. Here, something like knight d2 followed by king f2 would have been decent. I think white can hold this. But rook e7 was a move which like gave a lot of chances to black, because the rook is no longer in touch with the knight. That means that this knight has a free hand, plus the rook comes to the heaven, which is the 7th rank. And then after d4, Nepomniachtchi was always able to pose tiny problems. Then the problems were like larger in nature, and then it was very difficult to defend the position. Eventually, Nepo converted the game into a win. The next game I have is a game between Caruana and Giri. I think the position they reached after Queen f8 was very nice. I really liked this move. Talking about the opening, I think like as Vishayanand pointed out, after d6, Caruana was probably going to play bb5, and on knight c6 again Caruana was going to play bb5. Considering that, Giri might have played e6, and then after knight c3, knight c6, this is called the 4 knights, and here a3 was played by Caruana. He deviates from the standard theory, and after bishop e7 they reach a Scheveningen kind of a structure. I think Anish Giri understood this position slightly better and was able to like make precise moves. I'm coming to that position. The tactics based on d6 pawn, it felt like the pawn on d6 is hanging, but the pawn on b2 is also in danger because of queen b6. So based on that tactic, I think Anish Giri was able to wriggle out of this position. And then I like this move, queen f8, shows a lot of understanding. Though this knight is on d5, it's not really doing much harm to black, because there's no knight f6 check of any sort, and if you give up this bishop, this knight for the bishop, then black is happy with that trade. For example, if you go knight takes e7, there is queen takes e7, and if you take bishop takes e5, there is t takes e5, queen takes e5, black has rook takes c2. A very nice point shared by Anish was that Caruana was in a situation where he had to win. So to get this position and have a must-win situation is not pleasant according to Anish, and I think I agree. It felt like black's position is more pleasant to play, and then after a few moves he was able to outplay Fabiano Caruana. So some moves, I think bishop h4, and then he wants to exchange this bishop off. So I think h6 was very nice. One interesting moment was after knight g6, maybe bishop g4 was better to exchange this bishop off, because it's likely to turn into a bad bishop after bishop into d5. So bishop g4 was one interesting idea, but after bishop d2 and then h6, after a lot of pieces got exchanged, this position was completely in black's favor. The dark squares are completely in Anish Giri's control, and then he later went on to win the game very nicely. He played this f5 because he wanted to push this king to f7 and get this rook to h8. And then came a tactic with knight takes c2. You can't take queen takes g2 because the rook hangs, and you can't play rook g3 because of queen c1 check. King takes g2, mate on h1, and if you play queen f1, obviously there is rook h1 check decoy, and then you win the game. So that was Caruana Giri. Next game is Vachier Lagrave versus Alexianko. Here MVL chose f3, which is not so popular at the top level. It's called the fantasy variation of the Caro-Kann. He gave up his pawn with bishop e6, and MVL said that maybe it's a practical decision with knight d7. So he just gave up the pawn. It's not a blunder, it was a deliberate move, and to go into this endgame. And then it was a very well planned endgame. For example, in this position after rook d1, king d1, he calculated the endgame to a win. So the idea is to get this bishop to d6, which was pointed out by Daniel Navalgund in the broadcast. If you are missing on the broadcast, I think you're missing a lot. Do watch the broadcast on chess.com/TV. It was very exciting for me to watch how Daniel was able to calculate the ending. He also gives a lot of insight into the game, especially his tactics. So the plan is to play e5 and then put the bishop on d6 and then eventually win the king and pawn endgame. So that's what he does, and a sample variation was this: to get the bishop to d6 and then put him in Zugzwang and even give up the bishop. So then white wins, because these 3 pawns are very dangerous. So that was a win by MVN. Now coming to Ding Liren versus Grischuk, I think the position was pretty much equal, but at the 40th move, rook a3 was a mistake, because after rook a3, queen a3 and queen d2, it's much easy for white to maneuver and win. For example, if you play queen a6 to defend this, then white can play knight b3, knight c1, queen b, like even exchange the queens like queen b2, queen a1, and then the c6 pawns becomes weak. If any capture like bishop into e5 happens, then the d4 square is in white's control. He can just play bishop into e5. In the game, bishop into e5 was played directly by Grischuk, and then after knight e2, it was a slightly desperate decision by Grischuk. Plus, Grischuk was low on time, and then he was able to, then Ding Liren was able to win with queen c3. So the series of moves after 40th move, I think after 39th move, after this position was not really accurate. After rook a3 is when white suddenly started becoming better. If he had played rook a4, game is very much equal, but because of that move, rook a3, game turned, and Ding Liren was able to win. So that was a quick highlight about all the games that I had in mind. So considering the present scenario, I think Nepo has the best chance, and after Nepo Giri, based on the standings, I'm rooting for Nepo. I had been doing that from the beginning, but you can also watch the video in which the Indian stars pick their challengers, see what they had to say prior to the start of the second half of the candidates. And I'll be back with another video soon, and until then, take care, bye bye. Do like the video, do subscribe to our channel,